started, and maybe a few stragglers will wander in.
I don't know. Okay.
Is there anybody else coming that you guys know of?
But I just like
That you talked to? Okay, well, so then we may
Did
as
you
well just get
understand?
started. So this is Jay Seidel, who teaches journalism. Some of you, I think, know him, maybe, or Jen does.
I do.
Yeah.
I was his son's preschool teacher.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
Small world that way.
Yeah, oh, okay, a roundabout way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's here to talk to us about writing and journalism, because have you started sending your students yet?
Not yet. I kept saying, wait till I talk to him.
Yeah, right. He's got to educate us.
Yeah.
So he's going to educate us on all the rules that we need to be able to do it with students effectively. Okay? And I guess, is the recording on?
Is it already recording?
Just go ahead and think if it has a red dot or something.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
record.
Yep,
Is it recording?
I think it's recording.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Hi. First off, I talk a lot, but I'm not going to talk a lot to keep you guys here. But my students are pretty excited. The journalism students are excited. We've been talking about getting them over to the writing center to work on the writing. But there is this hesitation, just because there's some subtle differences between journalistic style of writing and regular, I guess, English creative writing or essay writing, that kind of stuff. So it's a little different. So, if we sent them over before, then you guys would tell them, this is what you do, and then come back and I tell them, no, this is what you do, and their brains would melt. So I wanted to just touch base with you guys, go over some of the main things, but a lot of the similarities, and that way when they come over, you can be like, oh, you're a journalism student. Okay, that's why you wrote it this way. That's good. Let you hand it back that way. There's way more than there are people here. So I did 20.
Yeah, but I wanted to.
You can take the extras.
Yeah, the students who aren't here.
So, okay, actually, yeah, let me take one, just so I know. I just want to keep on. No, you hold on to yours.
Oh, I was like,
I was grabbing one of the extra ones, just so I can keep on track here. All right. So, the biggest thing is there's different things with structure and different things with writing, but journalists adhere to grammar, right? That's the main thing. So when I'm sending my students over, the biggest thing I really want them to understand is, noun, verb, agreement, some of the basic stuff. So that transcends everything. So grammar, punctuation, for the most part with punctuation, all those rules apply. It's just when it comes into the stylistic aspect of it. If you start looking at their stories and pointing out some structure, stylistic things, I wanted to point out the differences of those. But I mean, again, plural, singular agreements are important. Pretty much all the articles that they'll bring over, that if you guys look at their work, they'll be written third person, past tense, right? So, as reporters, they report fly on the wall kind of thing. I'm the observer, here's all the information, I'm presenting it to you, it's all nonfiction, based on what I saw, based on who I talked to. Here it is, you take from it what you will, right? So that's what they're doing. I reported, this person said this, so there's no says. Because the example I always say, when you're reading the paper, odds are that person is not actually saying that at that specific moment, right? So it shouldn't be active voice, it should be past tense. This is what they said to the report, right? So, third person, past tense, governed by Associated Press style, not MLA. Okay, this is where it throws some of them off. So, Associated Press style, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. Whoa. Here it is. This is 2011. We've got an updated version, but this is the only one I grabbed. But inside, it's just a reference book, basically. Capitalized, hyphenated, use the acronym on first reference. Lots of random trivia on this. Like, for example, I was just looking if they had Twitter in this one, because the earlier ones were just getting into social media. and the newer ones have a whole section, special section on how to refer to social media, but just for example, Twitter. A message distribution system that allows users to post continual updates for up to 140 characters, detailing their activities for followers or providing links to other content. The verb is to tweet, tweeted. A Twitter message is known as a tweet. So it's just more of a kind of reference thing, and it tells you, it implies whether it's capitalized or not. Like just above it, 20-something. Associated Press style is 20 hyphen something, as opposed to spelling out 20. So now, that falls back on grammar. Like if it starts a sentence, just so you guys know, you spell out 20. Right? So then that's where grammar kind of supersedes some of these things, just so you guys know. But there's a lot of like little nuances in here, a lot of specific things. So this is what kind of governs journalistic style of writing. This is the base model. And you guys don't necessarily have, you guys are like, oh my God, we have to book. No, they'll get this from either their peers either in the newspaper or in the journalism program, or from me, or they'll have this to fall back on. Right? The reason why they're coming over to the writing center is, again, just basic grammar and punctuation and just English, right? So, so this stuff, if you look at it and you're like, I think you might be right, just kind of leave it alone. Just even maybe note, you want to check your style book on that one, right? They might look at it and go, oh yeah, I do have to change it, right? You didn't know they had to change it, but you kind of guessed, right? So, but if you guys get a chance, get an opportunity, if you want another reference book in your bookshelves, this is kind of an interesting book to have.
Do you get desk copies that you might be able to give us one?
I can get a couple, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
We'll have that on the shelf with all the other
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, I can get you a couple.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I once went to when I was doing my undergrad, I was editor of the paper at Cal State Long Beach. I went to a editor's workshop thing back in Michigan, hosted by Michigan State. And coming from Long Beach, I thought, oh man, I'm from a Cal State, and Ohio State's gonna be there, Penn, Michigan, Iowa, all these huge universities. Here I am from Ghetto Beach State over here, and I gotta know my stuff. I read this cover to cover on the plane, just to I'm like, oh my gosh. So I don't have it memorized. It's like saying I know the dictionary. I know where to find things in here and how to navigate it, and I know there's a lot of just random interesting trivia in here. But yeah, it's something that continually updates each year. Here's something. One thing that was a big difference for a while and drove journalists crazy was website. Webster says website, one word, lowercase w. Right? Makes sense. Associated Press said 2 words, uppercase w. It's the World Wide Web, specific noun, and then site. So drove journalists crazy because we all wanted to just do website, one word, lowercase. Everybody else is doing it. We wanted to do it too. All the cool kids use that. So finally, after a lot of pressure, the Associated Press said, fine, you can do it. We're changing it. It's all one word, lowercase w. We're going to conform to Webster's. So the way I always tell my students, check here first. If it's not here, go to Webster's. If it's not Webster's, it's not a word. Right? So at that point, then don't use it. Find another way to describe whatever you're trying to say. So this is the reference book that they fall back on. But like I said, we'll get you a couple copies, but you don't have to really agonize over this. That's what we beat them up in journalism for. So for writing, active voice is preferred over passive voice. You guys know the object, subject kind of thing. Object takes the action, does the
And that's we're talking about politicians, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, let's just shut it down. But active voice, I always, she hit him as opposed to he was hit by her kind of thing. So, in journalism, I think I mentioned it down. Yeah, the next one is concise writing. No need for detailed description. Yes, description, but the idea is not to elongate the sentence or stretch out the I had this great writer, he's a great writer, and he became an editor, but he was on staff, and he's like, I'm not a sports guy. It's okay. He's like, but I want to challenge myself. It's okay. He's like, I'm gonna cover a baseball game. It's okay, cool. Cover the baseball game. He went out and covered the baseball game here. Came back, wrote this story. It was great as like a novel, because he talked about how the batter approached the batter's box apprehensively, and the sun glistened off the aluminum bat. I was like, no. You're gonna lose all the sports fans when they're reading that for just tell me who won, that kind of thing, right? So journalism, brief is better, right? Concise, to the point, just get to the point, and you can add some descriptions. There's, especially if they come in with a feature story, right? Which literary journalism, creative nonfiction, is kind of the way we describe that. So, you judge me. So it's they can sometimes describe, like they can do scene setting, they can establish tone and a mood. If it's like a longer feature type of piece, they can start off with that just as a hook to draw somebody in. So, but they, like 3 paragraphs and then moving on, right? Then they're getting to the point of what it's about, then everything else goes to support it. So, again, it's not Walt Whitman, it's kind of more just getting to the point. So, so when you see it, you're like, you need to add more to this, just let it get to that, as long as it gets to the point. But like I said, active versus passive for the same reason, just get to the point. The subject does the action, right? Put the emphasis on the subject. Smaller paragraphs, the idea is one idea per paragraph. You don't have to cram a whole lot of things in the paragraph. The reason being, if you think about just a regular newspaper, no matter what newspaper, what format, whatever it is, if you have a big paragraph that you write on here, when that gets laid out into a column where, that's just a big block of text. As consumers, we're going to look at it and go, oh, hell no, I'm not going to read that. And it's just a whole lot of words. I got other things I got to do. So smaller paragraphs, more bite-sized, like here's this, then moving on to this, and moving on to this, moving on to this. Right? So they'll have smaller paragraphs. Vocabulary is aimed at an 8th grade level, right? You're like, oh, that's depressing. But it is, but you got to think about it. For journalistic purposes, you've got to reach the broad audience, right? It's a mass media, so you've got to reach the broad audience. So you're aiming at the 8th grade level so you can, hit the broader audience. Not all, that's a base level for journalism. It's okay if they use bigger words, right? But, and different publications use a larger vocabulary. Like, for example, journalism, like the New Yorker magazine. If you guys ever read the New Yorker, it's more of a higher level of writing as opposed to Maxim, right? So as far as magazines go. Newspapers, New York Times is a little bit more highbrow, right? A little bit, they use a broader vocabulary. They're also a little bit more traditional in their approach as opposed to like the Register, right? So that's the thing. So, you don't have to tell them to, sometimes I do tell them to punch up their language though, because their word choices are a little elementary. They can kind of use their big kid voices. Eliminate redundancies and repetitiveness. Again, the idea with journalism is, here it is, move on, here it is, move on, right? Structurally, I guess I was going to do the whiteboard, but I'm not going to do the whiteboard. I'm kind of jumping down a little bit. The basic structure for journalism is what's called an inverted pyramid, okay? So, and it's, your conclusion comes first. It ends up being like, if you guys ever took a speech or argumentation class. Here's your argument, and then you defend it. Here's what happened, and here's how we got there, right? So think of it structurally that way. So you're not building up to this ultimate crescendo kind of thing in journalistic style writing. Here's this, and then the least important details kind of come at the end, right? So again, structurally, that's something that differs a little bit. So there's no real build up at the end. Here it is. The bank was robbed. and then how do we get there? How did this happen? So that gets into the idea of redundancies and repetitiveness. You don't have to stretch it out, say what happened, and then move on. No need for serial comma. I put that in there because I even found it in the AP style book too, just to reiterate. In the back of the AP style book, there's a section on punctuation, right? And comma is the most misused element of punctuation, one of them. Comma, semicolon, whatever. It means pause. It's the way, and I've had debates with English faculty, even here, although he's not out there today. And he has a beard too.
They all have.
So, but we had this kind of realization, why do you guys take away that comma? In a series, like I said, red, white, and blue, right? It would be red, comma, white, and blue. Because in journalistic terms, the comma and the conjunction are redundant. So take that comma out, conjunction does a job for it, right? It just, like I said, I've had, not just with him, but I've had other discussions with English faculty about that, like, why do you guys do that? You're pressed for time, journalists are pressed for time, they're pressed for space, anything they can eliminate and cut out, that's redundant, take it out, you get the point, there's an and there, you got it. So that's one thing that is an example of a redundancy that I want to specify. No need for acronyms in parentheses after the name, that's an MLA kind of thing. So if it said, University of Southern California, USC, no, you don't need to do that. Second reference, you can do USC. Or, well, even though it says in here, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI is acceptable on first reference as FBI. But if you spell out Federal Bureau of Investigations, you wouldn't have to do parentheses FBI. And second reference is all subsequent references, it would be referred to as FBI. The reader then could look at, oh, FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, right? Again, journalism looks at that as redundant, right? They assume that the reader, if the reader's going to read it, they're going to see the acronym and then go back in the story. Think of yourself as consumers. You guys read news, right? What you guys are already kind of trained to, even scanning. Oh, you go back, right? so that's one thing. Did you have a?
Yeah, like, so is there a general rule for what, like the FBI, obviously everyone knows that, like, but like universities, like USC, I think that everyone in California, like.
Right. Yeah, this will tell you, but again, USC is not necessarily in here. We actually have a Hornet style manual, which kind of, I always tell them go to the Hornet manual. If it's not there, then go here. If it's not here, then go to Webster's. The Hornet manual would have like, is it the Cadena Cultural Transfer Center? Or is it the Cadena Cultural Center? Is it the Cadena Transfer Center? Is it the Cadena Center? So it'll be specific to things that students will use here. UC California, UC Davis. Is it University of California, Davis? Or is it UC Davis acceptable? So in those regards, if you see something like that, you can, if they come in there and know what to do, you can certainly say, check your style book, right? You can just refer them back to it on those specific ones. You might want to check your style book on that one. Because yeah, usually there are local styles, like we have with the Hornet, that kind of supersede this one, but this is the go-to. And like I said, if it's not in our book, this book, or Webster's, just don't use it. So, more often than not, if it's known like USC, FBI, you can just go ahead with that one. I kind of push them to do, so, to try to spell it out. But again, that's not necessarily your place. That's where I can take care of it over there. So,
But usually you're going to spell it out the first mention, and then every time after that it's the acronym.
Right, yeah. But you don't have to put the parentheses in there. So, because again, they see that as redundant. Editing, the ending comes first, don't build up to conclude. Yeah, the ending of the story, and the students might even reference this. Well, how's my lead, or what's my lead? Right, the lead is the beginning. That's what you lead off with. That's what's referred to journalistically. This is the answer is the who, what, when, where. Technically, why, and how. But the why and how can be kind of explained later, right? But it answers those questions. So like a lead, as a matter of fact, a lead could be one sentence. You could start a paragraph, paragraph could just be one sentence. Leads should be, we always tell a lead should be about 22 words. So for a paragraph. So it would be 2 gunmen made off with or stole $500,000 from the Wells Fargo Bank in Placentia Saturday. Right? Period. That just answered your who, what, when, where. Right? Why and the how is kind of understood. Why? Well, they wanted the money. Right? How? You said gunmen, so obviously they robbed the bank. Right? So that would, in a sense, that would be fine as a first paragraph, one sentence kind of thing. It's kind of dry. It's more of what we call hard news, breaking news. You don't see that in print too much anymore. You see that online, but that's okay, right? So just so you guys know, that would be the lead. That would be the climax, the crescendo. That here it is first, and then how do we get there, right? So then it gets details about how what the cops are saying with the overview. The detective on the scene is saying this, and then here's a couple other descriptions that's explained, and then here's something from one of the tellers, and then here's some other details, and then lastly would be something like the Placentia Police. If you know anything about this, contact the Placentia PD at this phone number, something like that, right? So again, if that's dropped off, the story's going to live. So it's like the least important information. Everything then goes to support the lead. So quotes and everything, again, thinking back to argumentation. So here's your lead. You're saying this is the most important news aspect that's going on. This is what this story is about. This is the theme. This is it. And everything else goes to kind of, you're not going to talk about a bank robbery and then all of a sudden, there's a flower garden, or you're not going to go random on tangents and stuff. So, direct, indirect, and partial quotes can and will be used all throughout the story. So, it's been a while since I took straight English classes, but with direct quotes, obviously, direct quotes are within the quotation marks. Indirect quotes are just to paraphrase information. So basically, as long as they don't change the context, it's what this person said, right? And then partial quotes are the mix between the two. Okay? You guys familiar with quotes and those types of quotes? Okay. So in journalism we use those quite a bit. Direct quotes come into play when they can say it better than the reporter can explain it. Right? Also, they don't or shouldn't have dumb quotes. Like, the sky is blue today, quote, said, that I can see that, right? That's dumb. I don't need a direct quote to say the sky is blue today. Today is Friday, said so-and-so. They can paraphrase that information, put it as context of the story, right? So even if you say, like, that's common knowledge, it's kind of a dumb quote, you can kind of point that out to them. Yeah.
So long quotes wouldn't be like block quotes, they'd be their own sort of paragraph.
Right, thank you. Yeah, you don't indent, right? It doesn't come in, it's just journalistic stories, journalistic articles, it's written conversationally. It's basically you're telling a story to your friend, ideally. So usually direct quotes are good tools to introduce a new idea, introduce a new person, right? They're really good at being used as transitions between two ideas you don't know how to reach. I'm going to introduce this new concept, but I'll use this quote for transition, right? So, but it's formatted just as the story. You don't indent. Quotes also 1 to 3 sentences in length. You don't go too far. You don't go too long, right? And then the same thing with the indirect ones, when you paraphrase it, right? You don't want to, if you don't want to go on and on and on, then you just cover that one idea and move to the next paragraph. Okay? The other thing, along those lines, I don't know if I put that right next to it, I should have. The attribution, the citation, of where that quote came from, right? It's different than what you guys do when you're instructing the MLA format and stuff like that. It's, say it's a direct quote, like we have in here. The sun is shining today, comma, inside the quotation, said Dallas Raines, television weatherman, right? So it would be verb said, or added, or explained, or whatever. Full name, if it's the first reference, and then identification, who they are, right? So no parentheses, Smith, 2009, kind of thing, right? It's just conversational. If that quote is used, and you already said Dallas Raines, then it would be Raines said on all subsequent references, because then it goes back to just last name. So I'm not gonna, I know that probably one of the follow-up questions will be, well, what if there's multiple people in the story with the same name, right? We wrestle with that all the time, right? I always tell them that the best thing to do would be to write around that, just try to do your best to not get into that situation. What's your last name? No, I can't talk to you. No. If, say, it's a family and they're all the same name, I always tell them you have to be kind of creative. So it's like, if it's Ramirez and, you're doing a profile of the son, and you introduce them both, and his father Joseph, and da-da-da-da-da, and then later on, the elder Ramirez said, right? The younger Ramirez said, try to be creative. But when it comes down to it, if you have to use it, they have to go first name, last name. It'll be Joseph and Michael. Joseph Ramirez, Michael Ramirez. Joseph Ramirez, Michael Ramirez. Right? It gets, again, that's something, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does come up, it's aggravating. It's even aggravating on our side, so we've got to figure out stylistically how that story is going to play out better. So, but yeah, it's usually last name and all subsequent references, and then verb, name, title. If you use a quote to introduce it. Now, if you introduce the person in a indirect quote, so if you took off the direct quote and just paraphrased it, it would be according to television weatherman Dallas Raines, the sky is blue today, or the sun is shining today, right? And you just, again, conversational, right? You put the attribution, citation in there conversationally. If they reference a printed subject and they use quotations, they're quoting a document, a study by the Center for Disease Control said, right? So you could say, they could write in there, according to a recent study by the Center for Disease Control, 4 out of 5 college students will, eat pizza each day or something like that, right? They don't necessarily have to put the quotations in there. Usually I tell them, paraphrase that information because they can explain they can explain it better than, if you just grab research text and put it in there. Again, it's not a research paper. So the 8th grade level person is going to be like, what the, if you take it and you can explain the context, better to paraphrase it, but then use direct quotes to point some specific things out. Does that make sense for you guys? Okay.
I have a question though,
yeah.
what you said. So if you do an example like this, where you say blah, 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 said Dallas Raines,
Yeah.
and then the next time you say Raines said, blah, 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 you put it at him at the beginning, and then, oh, okay.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I always forget that. Yeah. Really, we let the quote speak first. There's a difference between also print journalism and broadcast journalism in writing styles. In broadcast journalism, what we mostly consume when we hear it, they introduce quotes. They set up the sound bite, and according to Sheriff Lee Baca, blah, 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 blah. And then here's a cut to a sound bite where Sheriff Lee Baca says blah, 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 right? So they set it up and they transition to it. In print, the quote speaks first, because that's what people want to know. What did he say? And then who said it? The emphasis isn't really on who said it, it's on what was said. So broadcast has to set it up like, hey, keep watching, this guy's gonna say this, and that kind of thing.
And you would never sandwich the attribution in the middle of the two
Yes,
quotes?
yes, you do. If it's a multiple sentence quote, attribution usually goes after the first sentence. So you would do, said, you know, Dallas, you have that sentence, said Dallas rains, period, and then quote, capital letter, and then go on with another quote, but it's gonna be rainy this weekend, period, end quote. Right? So you could put it in between. In a sense, then you have quote, quote as a paragraph, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, like I said, I wanted to elaborate on some of these. These are just some things to kind of remind you. But I always tell them not to, you know, journalists kind of, well, not necessarily frown upon long quotes. You don't want to get long-winded because, you know, just think about when you talk to somebody and you just get to the point, right? Just you're talking to your friend, the person's just getting to the point, and it's like, okay, and then stop, got it, right? But then when you start going on and on, a lot of stuff is like, maybe it might be interesting. You're not gonna, if you're reading it, you're like, I'm not gonna read that, that's boring. So when they start quoting the person just because the person is speaking, just because they think, oh, this, whatever this person said must be important, I always tell them, you know, if they can say it better than you can explain it, put it in a direct quote, right? But if it's non-essential, just leave it out.
Sorry, this one's about the lead one.
Yeah.
If the lead comes first, how do they conclude?
There's no conclusion. There's no, you know, clearly, or as we can see, it just ends, right? Their endings, it's great if they can tie back some way, right? If you guys, if somebody comes in with a feature story, then the expectation is their ending is gonna have a little bit more punch to it. It's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna build up to how the bank teller entered the bank at the same, you know, and as a regular day, and they went about their day, they put their lunch down, and just, you know, really set the scene, and tellers came in, you know, people came in and stuff. You're not writing a novel in that regard. And then get to and then their day changed, and here's what happened, and the bank was robbed, the end, right? You're saying that the bank was robbed, and then how it kind of got there, but you can tie back to, maybe there's usually a great tie back would be if they end on a quote, and end on a quote maybe from the cop that says, you know, we're committed to getting these guys free. We don't want this to happen in Placentia ever again, whatever. Right? It's a good kind of overall way to kind of land the plane kind of thing. So, but again, usually the endings are, if it can't tie back, it's going to say what the next step is, you know. Police are going to continue the investigation, right? The fire inspectors or the arson inspectors are going to continue investigating the cause of the fire. Those that, with any information, please feel free to contact, blah, 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 right? But that kind of stuff. So again, it's not essential, it's good information. So again, all the information's up top. And then at the end, it's kind of like, oh, that's good, right? Or just a way to get in a feature, just a way to just end the story smoothly, to kind of like, you know, they all live happily ever after kind of thing. Did you have your hand up, or did I answer it?
Yes, you did answer. I was going to ask with the end of the quote. But I also had a different question regarding, you said nearly all articles are written in the third person. Will your students be doing like editorial pieces as well?
Right, or opinion pieces, or
Opinion-
reviews,
fine.
or those kind of things. Yeah, so let me get back to that. Yeah, most of the ones you'll see will be written in the third person past tense. Now, if it's a opinion piece or a review, it is their perspective of whatever it is. I always tell them to, and I was just beating somebody up, or not beating physically, right? But I was telling them in class, no. But I tell them in this way, I said, nobody cares about you. Because a lot of people, when they write reviews, they say, well, I didn't. When I went in there and I really liked this sandwich, and I had great service, and as consumers, if somebody starts reading this and I did it, well, it'd be for you, right? I don't care about you, just tell me if that's a good restaurant, I'm gonna spend my money there. right? If that's a good movie, should I see it? And I was so excited, I spilled my popcorn. And then I went back and I had to get some, I don't care about you. I don't care about your journey into this movie. Just tell me about the movie. So with that, it's kind of it's written with a little bit more personality and less objectivity. But it's still kind of third person. It's kind of a you understood kind of thing. You know, if they do have a first person, they better have a really good reason to have first person. Also, ideally they don't break that wall right between reader and writer. So sometimes they can do that. You know, you will really like this, or I tell them not to. I say some students. Say many, or you know, most might enjoy this, right? Keep the wall there. On rare instances, if it can be done and can be done well, go for it. You're not gonna. It's rare that somebody can do that well enough that'll be interesting that'll work. And again, first person. If it's a first person coming to you, a lot of times they'll just come to me because they say, if you're going to do first person, let me know, because it's difficult, because again, it's not about the reporter. The reporter is just an anecdote to illustrate the rest of what the bigger picture. I had a friend who was when she was reporting for the Register, she was a writer for she covered Laguna Beach, and she did a first person perspective. She auditioned for Pageant of the Masters. Right? You guys are familiar with Pageant of the Masters, where real people act as artwork, works of art. People walk by and watch them, you know, kind of stare at them. It's kind of creepy, actually.
I did it.
Huh?
I did it.
You did do it?
When I was a sophomore in high school. I was in Maha on the balcony. Yes, I was.
See?
All summer.
And you just do that. People
Every
walk
night.
by, and you're just real art. She did a first person perspective of it, but it started off with her and what made her kind of go there and what it was like to do the audition. But she then became just anecdotal with all the, you know, she shared some other stories from other people that were auditioning and what it was like and what they experienced. So intertwined their story and then went back to her, and then shared some other anecdotes and went back to this other woman who was really nervous, and and it wasn't about her. It was about what it's like to audition for Pageant of the Masters. She did the mermaid one, so she was actually topless. So that's what that kind of added to it. She was really nervous, and they measure you and turn you around and stuff. So you don't see many first person ones. Like I said, usually for beginning writers, it's difficult for them to grasp, because it ends up being I, me, mine, and me, and me, and me, and me, and me, and me, and her, and then me, and me, and me, and me, and me, right? So I always tell them to kind of stay off of the first person. So you won't see that many. Again, if you do see reviews or see opinion articles, they have to have substance with them, right? They can't just do an opinion on, I like the color blue, because blue is the color of my eyes, and people say it looks good on me, and there's got to be some kind of relevance to it, right? Why, make it an argument, and then defending it, supporting it with facts, and supporting it with some relevant information that makes it worthy, like, oh, you're going to influence, I gotta walk around. You're going to influence me and persuade me to believe this, right? So again, those of you guys that have taken speech or debate classes, then that's kind of what those articles will take on. But again, it's not a direct address to breaking the wall, and it's not a, I mean, my kind of thing. So that's why I said nearly all will be third person. You'll just get some of those.
My question was actually about tense. So I imagine, if I'm doing a piece on the current state of the cafeteria food, then I'd be using present tense.
Right. Yes. You can. Yeah. That's the thing. When I say it's past tense, I always tell I stress past tense, but I mean, if something's going to happen, you can't say, there's no way to make that past tense, right? You have to use it, or something is happening, they're still distributing ugly food or gross food or whatever, then they still are. So you just say it there.
Is it okay to switch tenses, or once you pick a tense, you just stick to that pony?
It's okay to switch tenses if it's appropriate, if that makes sense. If it calls for that, because again, if you're talking about, you're doing a story about college food, campus food in general, you're talking about how,
It
you
used
know,
to be
in
this.
University of Kentucky, they once did this. At Fullerton College, they are doing this. So you can switch like that as long as it fits. That makes sense. Again, really, it's a story by story basis. The fallback is past tense, third person, right? So that's why I said, rarely, you know, you'll see some of the ones that'll pop up. I don't want to say, yeah, they all are, and then I'll just get an opinion piece or something that's like, don't write that. Oh yeah, last name, second reference and subsequent reference, and then punctuation is placed inside the quotes. Yeah, I know there's situations where punctuation is outside the quote, like if it's a partial quote within a sentence within a bigger thing. My rule, in journalism too, what they always told us is that when it gets put inside, right, nobody's going to fault you really for having a period inside when it technically in a bigger sense is supposed to be outside kind of thing. So the fallback for journalism is put it, make sure it's inside. And for most time, all punctuation is inside. Commas are inside. Everything is a fallback inside the quotation mark. Yeah.
So what students are you going to require to come, and what kind of prereqs do they have to get into that class? Like, is there any English prereq before they take your course?
Yes. We had talked about who's coming over first. First, we're going to start with this semester, we're starting with the newspaper students, right? Because I was telling the newspaper students, I said, for better or for worse, they're held in higher regard because their homework is published, right? So the idea that they're writing for public consumption should freak them out enough, right? And that they need to really step up their game and really do the best they can to do all that kind of thing, right? Now, that being said, there is no prereq for the newspaper class. Drives me crazy, but I can't. Because there's a, what is that? They prefer, what is that?
Recommend?
Yeah, they recommend college, basically English 100, you have to have college level English. But it's not a requirement, because if a graphic designer wants to come in and design, or a cartoonist wants to come in, or a photographer wants to come in and take photos, right? And they might not, I'm just taking pictures, right? That's all I want to do. I don't want to write words. They have to write, I show how to write. But that's the thing, it's kind of an entry point. So, plus every time I bring it up, we have an advisory committee, and our advisory committee says, no, you can't do that. I stress heavily to them. And now the newspaper class is a repeatable class, so some have been, I changed the rules around repeatability, but basically it's a class that somebody could be on the newspaper for 4 semesters, right? This semester I actually have somebody who's been on, this will be her 5th semester. So the idea is they've gone through 4 semesters of this and writing, so those ones are a little bit more the veterans. Those are the ones that know a lot more, but those are the ones that are at that point are usually in the editor position and they're not doing a lot of writing. So they're more responsible for the managerial aspect. So the new people with no prereqs are doing the writing, right? But it's up to the editors to kind of peer evaluate, peer teach, and kind of make sure that it's scrubbed as clean as possible. So you can see that's why I'm bringing those guys in here, just to remind them the importance of writing.
Yeah, if there are details if there are any details. If it's leaning more towards one side or if it looks a little biased, are we expected to kind of bring out the neutral?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, you can point that out, and you're like, this seems kind of biased, right? Because again, I mean, you even just, not even as a tutor, but as a consumer, I'm reading this, I'm feeling you're a little biased on this. Now, if it's an opinion piece or a review, then it can be like, this is the worst film ever made, right? They could do that. But if it's like a news piece or a feature piece, it has to be fair and balanced. No, it has to have a balance, right? It has to, if you note bias in there, just say, this looks a little biased. That'll get them to go back and at least see if they can reach another side. Because maybe they just were too timid and didn't want to talk to the opposing side or the people that were against it because they were just afraid. You can note that, and then it comes back to me, where the editors, they'll get it and they'll push that person out there to go get that other side, right? So you'll get, for the most part though, most of the students in journalism, most of the ones that are coming in the newspaper staff, are college level English, are at college level English, right? Math is a different story, but college level English, they are there. So, I mean, you don't all of a sudden, I want to be a physicist, and but I'm at math 60. You have to have some kind of. Most of the ones that come in to want to write journalism are usually at the 100 level. Right? When we get moving a little bit more, maybe like next semester and the following semesters, we'll bring in like the Journalism 101 students. And Journalism 101 students have to have their prerequisites, English 100 or 101, whatever the first English class. So basically college level English. And the advanced news writing class, which their prerequisite is English 101. So you'll get some of the more seasoned ones starting probably next semester as we roll this out. But like I said, I wanted to get the newspaper students in here first, just because some of them are have had the advanced news writing class. Some of them have had at least the basic news writing class, and some of them are just entry level. The entry level ones, just to let you guys know, they kind of filter themselves out. So not out of the class, but they kind of know where the weaknesses are, and they kind of say, I'm not going to take on that AS embezzlement story, right? I'm going to do a story on Stinger's Cafe serving yogurt, right? I'm gonna take something that's not, that's a little bit easier to handle. They kind of manage they know their skill levels, and they work, and then they advance up, and so that they take it again next semester, and at that time they can step up their game. So you have kind of to answer your question as far as what type of students are coming in, you'll have a whole gamut basically of ones that know what they're, have a little bit better understanding, and some that are, maybe just struggling just right out of high school, but they tested into English 100 or English 101, and they're just kind of struggling with college level writing, right? Again, those are ones that kind of identify too. I meet with them individually. I'm meeting with them next week to go over where they are, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and we can fix it by the end of the semester. But yeah, so right now you're getting the newspaper students this semester. And then, like I said, next semester you'll start getting the news writing students. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Has nothing to do with the price of bread, but is the website, the online Hornet, the same as do they do the same articles, or are they different articles?
You found the website. That's a whole other drama right there. We had an outside server, real quick. We had an outside server. We were kind of happy, and then we're like, we're going to go on the campus. One of the Workforce Center website got hacked. So when they got hacked, campus said, no outside servers. We're going to host you. Right. Okay, so we bring all our stuff. We're still migrating some of our stuff over to the campus. Campus wasn't ready to host us. So it's buried. It's hornet.fullcall. It's a really ugly URL. It's weird. But that's great that you found it.
Well, I get some of the articles via my new Facebook feed because I also have that on there.
There you go. Yeah, they're using social media.
Mhm.
Basically, what happens, if you guys learn real quick the process, a student reporter will sidewalk chalk art festival, right, yesterday. So the reporter goes out, writes a story, she goes out, interviews people, gets information, tries to get at least 3 sources of information, a minimum of 3. I always tell them more. But basically, like somebody doing the chalk, somebody who organized it, and somebody who walked by to see how amazing it was, right? You get 3 different perspectives, right? Just that's an idea. They can get more too. So she gets all that, she writes a story, and then it's online through we have an online service that she just posts a story. It goes up, the editors get alerted that the story's been posted, it's not online yet. They take it, at least 2 editors will look at it and then publish it, and then it goes online. They can edit it if somebody's, oh no, you misspelled it, it's an E and an I, it's supposed to be switched around, kind of thing. Oh, we gotta fix that. They'll fix that, and then when it comes time for the print edition to come out, they'll copy from there and paste it into the print and make it, dress it up a little bit, kind of thing, put a photo in there, and then publish it. So when you see stuff online, it's pretty much going to come into print, but there's more content online than there will be in the print edition. So there's just because there's not enough real estate in the paper. So, but they're the same story, basically.
Real quick question. I'm sorry, the journalists who will be coming to see us, do they title their own articles, or is that the editors will be?
That's the editors. Yeah.
Okay, so we
they
don't
might,
know that.
they might, but it's the editor's responsibility to do that. Usually they'll come in with a suggested one, and maybe 80% of the time, they go, yeah, that's good enough. They'll go with that because the writer experienced it. The writers, they have firsthand knowledge of what it is. They get a feel for it, so they can put a suggestion. Usually the editors might either then tweak it or whatever, or it could change because they could write like a 12-word title, right? And you put that in a print or whatever, and there's just not enough room for that, so they could have to cut it down. So, there's something else I was going to tell you as far as with these guys. Yeah, the biggest thing though is, like I said, just it comes down. My concern is the basic grammar, right? It's like for example, I always tell them like okay, media is or media are. Media is or media are. It's media are, right? So they kind of, I know it doesn't sound right, but it's correct, right? It's plural form of medium. Its thing drives me crazy, and there's a lot of things that just I always tell them my pet peeve. It's a big one. Things like ATM machine drive me crazy too. That's a redundancy, right? ATM is the acronym. Basically, what you're saying is automated teller machine. So, so those kind of things you can just point out. Just it's or if you guys get sports articles. Great thing about sports articles is you have some flexibility with the pronouns. You have the Hornets and you have Fullerton, right? When you're describing the team, right? So Fullerton came out in full force or whatever. The Hornets addressed, so Hornets plural, Fullerton singular. So it's something I always wrap my brain and kind of point out to the sports writers. You might there's really only one sports writer over there right now. So, and he's been there for 3 semesters, so he kind of gets it. But there's a couple people that say, I want to try sports. So those are the ones that, come in with the sun glistened off the steel of the bat. Tone those guys down. But, yeah, and I always tell them, I said, while we talk about style, we talk about all this, where is it? It's you guys over there.
It might stop
Yeah.
at 3.
Oh, really?
Well, Bennett, give it a couple minutes, it'll turn back on.
Okay. Anyways, there it is. The main thing comes down to grammar. This is all great, but if they can't put sentences together, right, or run-on sentences, or can't punctuate, it's hard. When I was when I went to doing my undergrad in journalism, they required an upper division grammar class, which is not grammar, right? I hated that class, but it was so good, right? After I got out, because I got out, I'm like, I know how to punctuate, I know how to diagram a sentence, I know all this. I did this in 4th grade, you know. But it was so beneficial, right? I even started to call around to find out, can I get a master's like in grammar? I don't want to create a right. I want to get pronouns, you know, noun verb agreement, and they said no, we don't do that kind of stuff. But that's why it's really important for these guys to do that, right? So that's why I'm trying to push them over to you guys. But it's, you know, like I said, basic grammar. You guys can help them with that. I really appreciate that. So this other stuff would be great, but again, if you point out, like, if you just tell them, check your style book, or, you know, this does seem kind of biased, you might want to check the structure on this. I think you need to put this part earlier, or, you know, put this quote, you can even say this is a dumb quote, right? So, but you can say it in a nicer way. This just isn't a good quote. It's not interesting, right? But the biggest thing is just grammar and punctuation, right? So they think they know, but they don't sometimes. So they just need help. So if you guys can help them, that'd be awesome. So I didn't realize I spoke until 3 o'clock, so I apologize. Like I said, I can talk a lot, so I apologize. Especially when it's about journalism, I get excited. So if you guys have questions, you guys can email me.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. It's like everybody else, it's at fullcall.edu, right? But it's the letter J, and then S like Sam, E-I, D like David, E, L like Larry. And yeah, you can just email me, or you can be like, hey, I had this person in here and they had no clue what's going on. Or I had this person, his story was really good. You know, if you want to say positive, that's always good. We always like hearing positive things, because nobody says positive things. It's easy to criticize and say, you know, you didn't do that right. But if you know, whatever, if you have questions or whatever, just feel free to email me and contact me. I'll be more than happy to, you know, answer a question or whatever.
Will they be coming next week, starting next week?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they kept asking me, when are we supposed to go to the writing lab? Because I have it in the syllabus. And I said, just hold on till I go over and tell you guys, right? Because again, I didn't want you guys indent these paragraphs, you know. It's a quotation. So I'll start sending them over next week for the half-hour session.
Okay.
Will they be coming in close to the deadlines, or?
No, I hope not.
That means yes.
Yeah, I
You
hope
know
not.
that.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, with that one, it depends. The more relaxed people you'll get will be the ones that are doing longer features that have longer deadlines. Not longer features, but they'll have longer deadlines. You're probably not gonna get, well, they may even bring stuff that they worked on, but it might not have been published in print yet, and you can go over it with them, right? So it's actually been posted. Because I always tell them in the news business, basically, if they come to an event, 2 hours after the event, there should be a story up, right? That's the idea. They should go to an event, go back, you know, get quotes, go back, write about it, and then post it. You should go through the process and get it fast enough, and they send it out through social media. But that doesn't mean they can't come the next day or two and say, this is right, you know, we can point things out, and then they can go back, and the online editor can go ahead and fix it and say, we changed this, that kind of stuff.
Ideally, in the process, when do we see them? Are we seeing them like pre-print? Are we seeing them post-print? Like what?
Ideally, pre-print,
Okay.
yeah. Because, you know, after post-print, they'll already ran.
Yeah,
basically.
please encourage them to do that, because like it's like doing an autopsy report after the fact.
Right. Well, and that's what I do in the newspaper class with the because technically, this is a little interesting thing. I can't edit the paper by law. It's an ed code. I cannot. Nobody from the campus can tell them what to put in the paper. Nobody can. I can, as advisor, I go by and suggest things, and I explain to them why they need to do this and why they don't need to do this, but nothing, I do not usually see it ahead. I mean, I'll see stuff and be like, you might want to rethink that, right? But they can be like, you know, whatever. It's their choice, it's their paper, it's their responsibility. So, and that's why they need help. But then when the paper comes out, the print edition, the next day, the next class, that evening, pretty much the next day, I just go through, you know, and talk about grammar, punctuation, sources, you know, boring leads, bad quotes, mislabeled captions, just those kind of things. You know, size and measurements with paper, so I just beat them all up, right, on Thursdays, just tear them apart. But I tell them, I say, this is what you did wrong, just don't let this happen again. So then, that's the idea. So then we just leave that up in the newsroom too. They call it Bloody Thursday, and because it's all red ink. And so there's red ink all over the issue, and they can go back and check their pages and check their stories and find out what they did wrong and how to fix it. So that's something that they can kind of build off of. So I do the post stuff. The idea is preprint stuff is where you guys can help them. And just, again, I even tell them, don't think of it just on this story, think of it just as grammar, you know, as English, as becoming stronger writers, you need to know this stuff. So, I was also say that I just to let you guys know, I'm like a vampire. I have to be invited in to help. Like, so when they're doing a story, they have to, if they can come up to me with a story, hey, can you take a look at this? Or, Jim, will you take a look at this? Oh, then I'll come in and I'll take a look at it, right? Then I'll say, oh, you gotta fix this, move this paragraph, do all this stuff. But otherwise, if they don't, then it's on them. So, it's good and bad. Because if there's something libelous that goes out, my name's not in a lawsuit. So, but that's good. That's the good part. But the bad part is sometimes it goes out and it's not bad. It's not the best it could be. So if I wrote that, I would have done this. But it's their part. So, any other questions? I know you guys got a meeting to do. So, again, if you guys have any questions, just email me. Because again, I do appreciate it. I'll start sending them over. And it's not like you're gonna get like globs. There's only 18 in the class this semester. So they'll kind of stagger it a little bit. I told them to do a half hour a week. So
They should make appointments ahead of time.
yeah, so they'll start cutting, right? Because it's a half hour session, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If they don't think they need that much help, maybe they can come with a buddy.
Oh, and then we can split the time.
Yeah, I think we probably could do that, because 18 a week is gonna be a lot.
Okay,
So-
oh, is that a lot?
Well, no, it's okay.
Yeah, that'd be
it's
pretty
okay. But if they think that theirs isn't gonna require the full 30 minutes, that might be a good way to.
And I can see out of the 18, now the 18 includes the veterans, right? I can see where those might not necessarily come every week. So that's where I find out when they don't come, and I'll push them. So initially you might not get all 18, and there'll be times where you probably get like 15, and it's still probably a lot, but I can see where there might be 3 or 4 that I'm gonna have to kind of kick, because they're like, all right, I've been here 5 semesters. What's wrong with you? Been here 5 semesters, get out.
So if we end up sitting with 2, do we still have pink sheets for both of them then?
And paperwork.
And paperwork? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would guess that that's probably not gonna be the case most of the time, but
Right.
if there are people, I mean, I'm just concerned, we've been so busy that if we're adding 18 more a week, if they're having trouble getting in, and they have, if they can come in and pinpoint what they specifically want
Yeah,
help with,
yeah.
then maybe 15 minutes would be enough, but one person can make the appointment and then they can drag their friend along with them.
Okay,
I mean, I'll
yeah.
tell Maria, because I think she might have trouble with this. Even she won't
Yeah.
like that, because it's,
Would it be easier, because again,
it's
this
going
is,
against the rules.
yeah, and this is new to me too, so I don't know as far as with the time thing, because I was thinking that it might not need a whole half hour, so. But would it be better at least every 2 weeks, they do a half hour every 2 weeks, and would that be?
I think that might work better,
Okay.
just to start with.
Yeah, I can change that, that's not I just thought, the more help the better, go,
Yeah,
that kind of
I'm
thing,
just
so.
concerned they're not gonna get in,
Okay.
and then,
And we'll
It's
overwhelm
gonna-
you guys with all this, and now you more people, yeah.
no,
So.
no, no. Well, I mean, if they can get in and they find it beneficial, and they wanna keep coming, the more the merrier, but I was just thinking, if they can't get in and they're desperate, that might be a way to
Okay.
resolve that.
Yeah, this is the
backlog.
pilot program with the journalism classes right now,
Yeah.
so we're just trying to
We'll
see how it's
it
gonna work.
goes.
So, yeah, if we just do it, I'll just tell them, because then I'll adjust the syllabus, I'll just tell them it's 30 minutes every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that might be
Okay.
a better way to start.
That way
right
you
now.
get like 8 and 8 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
Good. And if you can send over, if you get a copy,
electronic?
yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
I saw a capitalization error in there, so I'll fix it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I typed it out last night, and I'm like, oh, that's good, so.
The book.
Oh, the
Like one of
book, I
those
thought you were
books.
talking about this.
Oh,
I
yeah, no,
definitely
no, no, we have
electronically.
extras of the.
There is a
the-
capitalization error now.
Oh, I know you always see it. Yeah.
But yeah, I'll get you a couple desk
Yeah,
copies. The
that'd be
newer
great.
ones they have a black cover. And these are just, if you guys are ever curious about this, obviously Amazon. But I mean, our bookstore has it, Barnes and Noble has them. They're usually back in the writing reference section of the AP style book. But they won't be, the ones at Barnes and Noble are perfect bound and not spiral bound. So just kind of tucked away in there. So right where MLA format will be associated with how to write screenplays, that kind of stuff. So, okay, well, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay,
All right, thanks a
bye.
lot, bye.